ate too much on holiday recently, but I'll try and keep my breath in as I talk to you. So anyway, my background is that I started as a bartender mixing cocktails, which is cool because as a bartender mixing cocktails, you can get away with all the other stuff about your life, which is not very cool. But I took that to a level where I did some things like set a few world speed cocktail mixing records. And if you want to know more about that, then you can ask Fleury because she obviously shared that with... Yes, exactly. And which means that I'm good at a party. If you get me on a sort of cocktail per minute rate, then you get a lot of cocktails out of me. But I used that really as a bit of a publicity stunt at the time, and I loved the whole cocktail thing. But eventually, when I sold my bars, I moved into working with drinks companies and the hospitality industry. Really to, first of all, help them develop their drink-making skills, but after that, it was more about how we connect with people, which is the thing that I'm really passionate about and that I truly love. And I sort of became a little bit focused, I was going to say obsessed, but then that makes me sound a little bit weird. So I was passionate about the whole communication idea. And as I got more into that and the psychology behind it and how and why we connect, I started to branch out. So these days, where I find myself as an ex-mixologist. Do you like that word, by the way, mixologist?
Love it. Love it.
Isn't that a cool word? Because when I started, we were barmen. And then we pinched something from the United States and called ourselves bartenders. And then somebody thought, well, if we take the ologist bit, it makes it sound like we have a degree. So now we're... Anyway, so as an ex-mixologist, I find myself working with people and companies to help them develop their communication skills and the way they connect and communicate within their companies and with their customers, and if you're in hospitality, with your guests. And that's really become my passion, but I have a slightly left field approach to it because of something else that was mentioned earlier, which is my involvement with deaf people and with sign language. Can any of you sign? No? Yes, I know you can. Do you want to learn a sign? Yeah. This wasn't what I prepared for my talk, by the way, but I don't know, you just sort of fed me line. I thought I'd run with that. So signs. Right? So this is hello. Yeah, okay, right. So this one is good, and you might think that's obvious, but interestingly, this one is how are you? How are you? Which is like health good. So you'd say how are you? Now this one here is. Anyone know this one?
That's bad.
Yeah. This one. This is bullshit. That's cool, isn't it? Don't you want to go around doing that? You can use that when you're talking to people. You can just stand there going... Yeah, look at you perfecting that sign. How are you doing today? Anyway, one of the things that I discovered from working with deaf people, and I'm not actually talking to you about this today, but one of the things that I discovered from working with deaf people is that there is a way that we absorb information when we're learning that language, which is very different to the way we absorb information when we learn to speak. And because of that, I'm actually in the process of developing a technique for teaching hearing people how to develop their body language more effectively, because traditional body language training actually is not that effective. People understand it, they just can't put it to work very well. But that's not why I'm here. That was just an ad. I'm here because of connection and talking about connection. And I thought what I'd do is I'd pluck out the one thing that I think is potentially the most powerful tool that we sometimes use without knowing it, that we often don't use because we don't know it, and sometimes we just sort of use it because we're aware of what's going on. And it's this beautiful word, and the word is reciprocity. Have you heard this word, reciprocity? I actually had to practice for a week to even write that. When I talk to people about it in workshops or whatever, I write it up on the board, and as it's getting to the end of the chart, they're getting impressed with the fact that I can write a word with so many syllables in it. So, reciprocity. I'm calling this very brief talk the amazing power of reciprocity. So let me tell you what reciprocity means and what it is. In very simple terms, it comes from the word reciprocal or to reciprocate. And in very simple terms, it means that a person is more likely to do a kind deed to someone who has already done one to them. In other words, you give something, somebody wants to repay that deed. And this is a social construct. It's something that is so powerful that we actually all live our lives by it, whether we realize it or not. So let me just put you in this place. How many of you have been in a bar? I kept it simple because if I give you like a complicated question, then not many hands go up, right? So how many of you have been in a bar where you're with a group of people and somebody's buying a round of drinks? But before you leave, you have the need to buy your round of drinks. And that is reciprocity. Reciprocity is the need to repay, to be seen to have been repaying, to feel like you're not in someone's debt, but also to repay a kind deed. But it's such a powerful social construct that if we step outside of it and we don't adhere to it, then by our contemporaries we are seen as being bad people. So take the drink scenario again. You have a round of drinks bought for you and you drink your drinks, but you leave without buying your round of drinks. Suddenly people are saying, whoa, have you seen what a tight-ass John is? He never buys a round of drinks. And before you know it, people are talking about how you've committed a crime, a social crime. So we are all subject to this idea of reciprocity. But what I want to do is, and talking about stories, because you mentioned stories, and I love stories, with my time, I'm going to share 3 stories with you. Is that cool? You all right with stories? You actually got the look of somebody who likes to sit and listen to stories. Because I would have said Fleury, but when Fleury was... No, because I'm not allowed to do any of this. Right, okay. Let's come out of that. So the first one I want to tell you is an example of reciprocity where it was used amazingly powerfully. Was with a group called the Moonies. Have you all heard of the Moonies?
Oh, yeah.
Not so sure. So the Moonies were, they were actually called the Unification Church. So they were set up in America around about the late 60s, early 70s. And they were considered to be a religious cult, really. In fact, they challenged that, believe it or not, in court, and were found not to be a cult. But they got quite a lot of bad press. However, when they set themselves up, what happened was, as a small church, they used to go out on the streets with collection tins and ask people, as they were walking by, would you mind donating some money to our church? And people on the whole would put their hands in their pocket and drop some coins in. And they were very successful at raising funds like that. And as more people joined the church, more people went out on the streets and they raised a lot of money. But then as they were considered by many people, and in particular the press, to be a cult, they started to get bad coverage. And they found that when they were on the streets and they were handing out the tin in front of people, and they would say, would you mind donating to our church? People would go, no, hold on a second. I know who you guys are. No way. Have a nice day. And off they would go. And before they knew it, the money started drying up. So they come up with an idea that actually encompassed and embodied the power of reciprocity. And it's something you might recognize today, but at the time was quite unique. So what they did was, instead of going out on the street with just their collection tins, they had their collection tins in one hand, and on their arm they had a basket. And in the basket were some small flowers. And as you walk down the street, instead of putting a tin in front of you, they would go to their basket and they would hand you a flower. And instinct for most people was to grab the flower. At which point, they realised who they were. And they said, no, thank you very much. And they would say, no, it's okay, it's a gift. And they would say, well, I don't want your gift. And they said, well, we're not taking it back. We don't want anything from you, but it's a gift. You can keep it. And the conversation would go backwards and forwards a few times, but inevitably, they wouldn't take the flower back. Now, while some people threw the flower on the ground, most people did this. And they used that to actually start building their funds. Now, that's the power of reciprocity. Even though they didn't want the flower, the fact that they had accepted a gift would create a need to repay that deed, even in a negative forum. So reciprocity, for people like the people around this table, has its place in many areas. So if you're in a sales environment, we call it almost like the stealth tool of sales. If you're in management, and most people are in management at some level or another, it's one of the most effective tools at actually developing your teams. I mean, there was some research done recently talking to the very top managers across all industries. And what they were doing was trying to find out what the best managers do that is different to what the rest of them do. And there was a sort of list of things that they came up with that they all agreed with, and one of them was about loyalty. They were saying without the loyalty of your team, it's actually very difficult to achieve anything. Because if they're not loyal to you, then how can you get them to go with you and follow your dreams and your idea and your passion? But here's the rub with loyalty. You can't demand it. Loyalty is not something you can demand from someone. You can't say, I expect your loyalty. And you can go, yeah, sure, no problem. Absolutely fine. We bestow loyalty. And we bestow loyalty because we respect somebody, or we like them, or we like the way they treat us. And so then we think, this guy or this girl is a great boss. I would do anything for them. Actually, I'm just going to pause for a second. How many of you in your careers at some point have worked for somebody who you felt incredibly loyal towards? Just a little show of hands. And would it be fair to say then that that person was somebody that you respected, and you respected their opinion, and they treated you well, and maybe more importantly, they respected you, regardless of the fact of where you are? In management, it works like this. A good manager gives first. He gives trust and respect and support. And that then creates an air of reciprocity where they want to repay. And the best way somebody in your team can repay you is with loyalty, which then comes with passion and drive and commitment and everything else. But I'm going to jump from management. I'm going to jump to sales for a second. How much time have I got? Are we okay for time?
We're okay.
Because once I start talking, I have no concept of where we are in time. Well, the meal comes out and I stop. Hold that food for a second.
Keep talking.
Let's just keep going. So, I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me and my wife. And 3 years ago, she suddenly, out of nowhere, had this sort of spark of inspiration. There was a fashion item that she wanted. She decided she wanted a pair of pink Timberland boots. Pink Timberland boots. Now, the background to this is she'd never put a pair of boots on in her life. Stilettos fine, flip-flops on holiday, bare feet is okay, but boots, no. But nevertheless, pink Timberland boots, so out we went. We went to where we knew there was a Timberland store, and there were no Timberland boots. When we asked, they'd never heard of them, it's not in the range, that's fine. So we then embarked upon a quest that every time we went past a Timberland store, or for that matter, a store that might stock Timberlands, we'd check the window out. Sometimes we would go in, ask, no. And then one day, after 2 years, we walked past the store and we glanced in the window, and there, on a pedestal, in the middle of the window, with a light beaming down, like God had placed them there just for us, there they were, pink Timberland boots. We're in. So we go in, and we're met by a young guy, young sales assistant, I'd say mid-20s, something like that. And he says, hi, can I help you? And we sort of relayed the story. We didn't just say we'd like to try them on, we sort of hit him with the whole story. And he said, well, great, why don't you take a seat? I'll go and get some Timberland boots for you. And so while we're sitting there, the anticipation is, I mean, after 2 years, I might sound a little bit strange, but after 2 years, I was expecting them to float out. But anyway, he comes, and he must have played up to this now, I think about it, but he's carrying them like this. You know, like a cushion with a crown, the Queen's coronation or something like this, and he brings them to us, and my wife is like, and again, so she gets the boots, her shoes come off, puts them on, ties them up, and she stands up, she looks at them. I don't like them. I said, what do you mean you don't like them? She said, I don't like them. I said, well, are they not pink enough? Because they look damn pink to me. She said, no, I like the colour. The colour's good. But they're not comfortable. I said, okay, right. You've not worn boots before, so let me explain how it works. You put them on, they feel like shit. You walk around with them for 2.5 weeks, and then they soften up. I said, ask the guy. Now, this is the point. Because I've actually given this guy an open door to flog these shoes. And I'm pretty sure he's on commission. So it's in his interest to sell these shoes. And I say to him, ask the guy, and he says this to my wife. He said, well, actually, your husband's absolutely right. He said, it's true. They do feel pretty tough, and especially if you're not used to them, they're going to feel uncomfortable. But you wear them for a week or two, and they soften up, and then they sort of feel like a glove. However, he said, it's not the case with everyone. Some people never actually get used to them. What I suggest to you, he said to my wife, is we have pink Timberlands now, so you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't matter whether you buy them today or whether you buy them in 2 weeks' time. Why don't you go home, think about it, talk to some other friends who've had the experience of doing this, and then come back if you want them. I thought, that's good. That's good. I like what you've done there. That's really impressive. My head's going reciprocity all over the place. Now, I know what's happening. I don't think he knew what he was doing, but this is the perfect environment for reciprocity. And even though I know it's the perfect environment for reciprocity, I can't resist it. It's dragging me away. And I'm thinking, I know why I'm feeling like this, but I like what you've done. I like it so much, I bought the shoes. I bought them. And I even said to my wife, I said, look, what's the point of going home? Because you're going to have a conversation. We're going to have to come back here. We might as well buy the shoes. So look, I guess what I'm trying to say to you in relation to sales is that so often with salespeople, they're so focused on the sale that they miss the opportunity to provide a service. And when you provide a service, then the person you're selling to feels like the salesperson has their interests at heart. And therefore they're going above and beyond what is expected. And you think, God, I want to repay you for that. And in this case, the only way I could repay him was buying those boots. Now, I'll come back to the boots in a second. Because I just want to talk about hospitality while we're here. I'm going to slip this in real fast. I have no idea how long I've been talking. 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes. Got a clock on me? No, yes, right, you're timing me. Like your body clock is timing me. Right, okay. So here we go. Hospitality. Is there anyone here from hospitality? Anything to do with it? Food or drink? Or yes?
Yeah, supplying to hospitality.
Okay, right. So it's sort of relevant to you. But hospitality is relevant to whatever you do because ultimately, whatever your business is, it's about relationships, it's about connection, and it's about creating that. So I think this is relevant, but I just love this story because I'm going to tell you it. So here we go, real quick. So this is now 4.5 minutes because I've been talking through 30 seconds of mine. So some years ago, I met up with a couple of old school friends. It was like a reunion, and we went out and we got pretty drunk and we were fairly steamy. But at the end of the night, you know what it's like at the end of the night because you feel like Superman. We'd say, whoa, let's get up. Why don't we meet tomorrow for lunch at that new sort of burger diner bar? And we said, yeah, okay, we'll do it. Fine. Next morning, head wake up, but I was aware, I remembered. And I did force myself out of bed and I made my way to the place that we said we were going to meet up for lunch. And so did they. But when we got there, we were all feeling pretty rough and a little bit ill. You ever felt like that?
Never.
No? Maybe folk can sort that out tonight. So anyway, we get into this place, and it's sort of modern, contemporary burger, diner, restaurant type place. And we sit down at the table. We're shown to a table. We sit down at the table, and we're left with a couple of menus. And both of it, there's not much conversation because we're both feeling pretty rough. And we're sort of looking at the menu, but not really taking any of it in. And then along comes this girl. She says, hello, gentlemen, have you had that? Whoa! And we went, oh. She said, what happened to you two last night? And we said, a bit of a heavy night. She said, right, put the menus down. You look like you need some help. So we put the menus down. And she said, do you like burgers? And we went, well, yeah, we like burgers. She said, great, because look, if you like burgers, you're going to love our burgers. We actually have our own herd of Highland cattle, which are reared especially to provide the meat for our burgers. And when the meat eventually gets here, the chef hand chops that meat. He has his own blend of fresh herbs which go into it, a little bit of garlic, and then rolls it up into a half-pound burger patty. That then goes under the grill for 20 seconds each side just to seal the burger and seal all the juices, all those wonderful meat juices into the burger. we're now like this. Okay. She said, how do you feel about mushrooms? So we went, oh, okay. She said, well, look, if you like mushrooms, maybe I can suggest the following. Our chef, he takes chanterelle mushrooms and slices them really fine, sautés them in a bit of garlic butter, then throws in some Chianti just at the point that the mushrooms want to absorb liquid. They then absorb the liquid, he takes them off, puts them in a pile on top of the burger. How do you feel about tomatoes? We're going, yeah, we like tomatoes. She said, great, because we take our tomatoes, saute them in a little bit of olive oil, infused with basil, and then those tomatoes go on top of the mushrooms. And of course you like cheese, and we're saying, yeah, of course we like cheese. She said, well, we take a big, thick slice of Monterey Jack cheese. That goes over the whole lot. It goes back under the grill for 2 minutes. The cheese melts down the side, sealing in all the mushrooms and the tomato and the meat until it bubbles on the top. We then take it out and put it into our own home, stone-ground, baked, homemade buns. Goes on the plate next to it with some homemade fries, and we call that a garbage burger. And we said, well, we'll have 2 of those. She said, great. She said, if you're going to have those, you want an even better experience than that. She said, what I suggest is you both have a side of green pork chili dip. And we said, okay. She said, what you do is this. When you get the burger, you break off a piece in your hand, you dip it into the green pork chili dip, you put it into your mouth, and it will dissolve on your palate. She says it's like oral nirvana. We said, we're in. She said, great, you're going to need something to wash that down with. You're looking still pretty rough. I don't think you should have any beers. I suggest one of our pitchers of iced lemon tea made with our own lemons. We said, done, great. So off she went. We're now awake and alive and anticipating what's going to come. Also, at this stage, we are both clearing up the drool that had been running down our shirts as she was describing this burger. The burgers came, they were amazing. And while we were eating, she came back time and time again. Check, are you all right? Are your drinks okay? Eventually, she declared, you look ready for a beer. Great. We'll have beer. Fantastic. By the time we got to the end of the meal, we had the desserts and everything. And you know what? The bill came. And I'll be honest with you, the bill was pretty steep. It was pretty steep. But you know what? It didn't really matter. Because the experience was amazing. The experience was truly amazing. And even though it was far more than I would have expected at the beginning of the day when I thought I was going out for a burger for lunch, in reality, it was worth, I would have paid double probably for that. And actually when it came, and this is the kicker for me. The kicker is this, especially in the UK, we have this sort of philosophy when it comes to tipping that we don't really like to do it. We don't feel that most people who we tip deserve it. So we put on that begrudging 10% and think, you know, I'd rather have kept that for myself. But I was in a different place. And this is reciprocity screaming out all over the place because I wanted to repay her for something that blew my mind. Her passion, the experience went far beyond anything that I could have imagined. And so I tipped her. And you know what I tipped her? This sounds ridiculous, but I tipped her £18. And the reason why I tipped her £18 is that the bill for 2 burgers was 42 quid. 2 burgers and some alcohol, right? And some other bits. It was 42 quid. And I had 3 20s. And I was going to give her a tenner. But when I put it down and I saw the bill, you know, I just said, keep the change. And I don't know what she got paid, and unfortunately a lot of people who work in restaurants get something ridiculous like £6 or £7 an hour, but I bet you she went home with £1,000 in her pocket every week the way she did it. And this is the power of reciprocity. And when it comes to, and I guess I've got to tie it back into why we're here and what we're doing and how it works. When we think about our businesses, and we think about the people within our businesses and how we all interrelate, there are so many elements to improving and developing relationships. But actually, if you can step forward and give first, then what you find is that what comes back is twice as much. Funnily enough, as we were chatting here, we were chatting about an old lady neighbour. We were talking about some old lady neighbours who have been a bit lonely, and your husband had gone over and given her something unexpected. And what did she do? She knocked on your door and offered something for the kids. And that's reciprocity. And that's what happens, and it opens up relationships with your customers. So whether you're in direct sales or whether you're doing services and working in marketing or whatever it is, it's the same idea. It's not just about we have this fantastic product or we have this amazing service. It's what goes beyond that, because it is a relationship and it's a sort of giving part of a relationship. And also, by the way, in your personal relationships, I have found, to my cost, I have found that when I don't give first to my wife, not much comes back. But of course, when I do, then I'm in a better place. So I would say this to you, in closing, I would say this. If you want to think about, regardless of where you're at with any of these parts of your business, if you want to think about how you can develop it further, in terms of relationships, customers, whatever, then although there are many steps and many elements to it, just think about the opportunities to employ the amazing power of reciprocity. And as a final word, I said I'd come back to the pink Timberlands. So I bought them. My wife never opened the box. And 6 months later, I sold them for half price on eBay. Thank you very much. Thank you.